Okay, so FroStee versus Alutemu we've got coming up, and both these players again bringing some cool lineups. We see Zeus strike again from Alutemu at least. FroStee bringing, I feel like his signature Murloc Paladin now. Is this 2 weeks in a row that he's brought?
I think that might be the third.
Maybe even 3?
Yeah.
FroStee just likes this deck, and fair enough. No,
I'm glad there's one of us that likes it.
Well, I guess to a certain extent, there aren't that many people teching for it because no one else is playing it, so maybe there's some extra buff of strength the deck has. If literally no one else submits it, it means he's a little bit more flexible. So he's having his Shaman banned out, and he put the Protect on his... Oh, FroStee, come on, we were mates. Put his Protect on his Warrior. Alutemu, on the other hand, protecting that Priest and getting his Warrior banned out. No Warrior moves. Okay.
Yeah, FroStee's redeemed himself by banning away the Warrior
you know
as well as protecting it.
Fair enough. So it is going to be... You're going to see the Shaman come out from Alutemu, and I actually didn't hear the deck from FroStee. What was it?
Neither did I. I'm sorry, I was too busy listening to your dulcet tones, but I'm sure we'll get into it when it does come down. But I think for Alutemu here, going with the Protect on the Priest that he has gone for again is a decision I am personally a big fan of. I think that against the Druid, obviously, fantastic, we know that. And I would even argue against the Paladin. I think it's a pretty good shot against Murloc Paladin. The fact that Murloc Paladin, until it hits turn 4, very often displays such...
garbage.
I don't want to say garbage, but just like fair stuff. Like even if it's the quote-unquote dream curve of like Cold Light Oracle, or sorry, the Tide Caller, and then it would go for a 2-drop Murloc as well, and then maybe War Leader. Like all that stuff is just fine.
There is like an ace though for the Murloc Paladin, which is the Toxfin. Can cause some issues for Priest if you kind of go all in with Divine Spirits, then they just Toxfin it. You're in major trouble. Fair. I feel. But yeah, we'll see what happens. And Alutemu there, you see the lineup, and I agree in general. I feel like unless your opponent has submitted a very, very strange lineup, if you are bringing Priest, you should probably be shielding it.
I think that's fair. There have been some players who've gone for more anti-Priest styles of play, but that hasn't been too much apparent this week. One of the reasons why Rogue has been so lowly represented is because it does poorly against Druid, Shaman, and Warrior.
Right.
No Rogues at all this week of Hearthstone Grandmasters. But I feel like it can do very well against Priest because of all the early tricks and removal that you have to be able to clear off their board turn after turn. Sap as well can be very, very powerful. I think it does have a decent matchup against Priest. And that's why I think this week in particular it was such a good bring, because there were so few counters being brought. But by that same metric, maybe that makes Murloc Paladin a better bring this week, because Rogue has a very good matchup, I find, against the Murloc Paladin, being able to dominate boards so heavily early on.
Yeah, I don't know, just the way these lineups go is kind of interesting, because Alutemu Shaman, I think it's again the same as Glorious, in that it's the double former champ, so it's the I'll say greedy list, because former champ versus the Giggling Inventors, well, Giggling Inventors more defensive in general, and it does have that one Earth Shock, so I don't mind. I feel like I like this build more in tournament play, or in exactly Grandmasters play, and not so much on ladder, because I feel like on ladder that you're generally against more aggressive decks than what people are submitting right now for Grandmasters. But we'll see how it works out, because the Paladin can be extremely aggressive, and one thing the Shaman doesn't have is AoE early game, or at all.
Just checking again, actually, the list between Glory and Alutemu, because interestingly enough, last week they had literally identical deck lists. I think this week they have 1 card difference between them in their Warrior list, which is an assembly for a Plague of Wrath, which does not come into play in this particular series. They're not playing against each other. But it's just interesting, again, to see how the two players are practicing together, and how Glory seems to be getting all the glory. Alutemu just really falling behind, even with the same decks being brought week after week. Something about his playstyle or his opponents that he's hitting is just not going his way.
Yeah, well, let's see how this one goes, because it is going to be the Murloc Paladin versus the Quest Shaman, and that is actually a little bit scary for Alutemu to deal with. That opening hand looks pretty good for FroStee.
Does indeed. No prismatic lens is, I guess, the absolute dream scenario, but still
he's got time.
Perfectly good enough to get this start rolling. This is just high stats on the board, which unless Alutemu can find either the Kobold Lackey, Goblin Lackey, or Ethereal into Zap, this could get pretty rough for him. And that is none of those.
It is stuff, though.
It is stuff, and you like stuff.
Yeah, I think he actually goes through, right? 3 minions on the board going into turn 2. Going into, well, your opponent's turn 2, I mean. It's actually pretty solid.
I kind of want to see the second Sludge Slurper, right?
Oh, really?
Yeah.
What, to negate a value trade?
Unless it's Faceless plus Sludge Slurper next turn. Yeah, like to deny a value trade, which can be pretty good, I think. And also just like playing a Lackey on turn. I guess, oh no, I mean you can do just a Lackey next turn. Is that bad?
I don't know, I just like this because it's small stuff, and next turn you can just Sludge Slurp it into Lackey.
Fair enough.
So you can just keep pumping out more things.
Yeah. Does mean, of course, he'll only have 3 mana on turn 4, but I guess that's not that bad. He doesn't have anything that he wants to play, especially for 4, so fair enough.
I don't even think there's a lot in the deck you want to play on turn 4. It's a shame.
Yeah,
Apart from
that's true.
1-drops, you know, like if you go, you know, Cable Rat into 1-drop into, you know, you a 1-drop from earlier on. There's not actually any 4-drops that are vital for turn 4. And this could be one of the hiccups. Without a mutate, we see double former champion hand, and that is not going to do much against Murloc Paladin. FroStee will probably just ignore them.
I would be very unsurprised to see that.
What if you trade the 1-2, push 2 to face, and then just evolve it?
You'd much rather get a 3-drop out of a 1-2 than a 2-drop out of a 2-1 though, which is why I think I like this one.
Okay. Right.
Especially if you can hit that, that's actually not that bad. Just allows him to go nice and wide on the board. What's that card even called?
Imp Master.
Imp Master, yeah.
Effectively a 1-4, then creates a 1-1.
Yeah. And then, of course,
On the turn played.
every turn, which it probably won't be killed off here unless FroStee wants to go for War Leader and trade, which feels, I think, a little bit of a poor play for War Leader on this turn. You want to get more value out of it than just that, especially as it dies on board.
I wonder if just another amalgamation is
That's what I'm looking at.
Because the problem is, like, even Finley and Tidehunter will they die, right?
Yeah.
Whereas at least a 3-4 is actually pretty tough on this board.
And this is starting to become the fact where I'm seeing why, you know, Murloc Paladin is shunned by most players, because in a world where lackeys exist, it's like the worst plot for a movie trailer ever. In a world where lackeys exist, the Murlocs just can't really stand up against them, because this is like pretty close to the absolute dream for FroStee outside of Prismatic Lens. Like, he spent all his mana on well-statted minions, 3/4s, just spider tanks to throw down are not bad. And he's not even that far ahead. I think Alutemu very possibly could swing this one back fairly easily.
You belong to the bar now.
I think it might be an uphill climb here. We'll see. Yeah, the mind control tech is there, but without the quest hero power, that it doesn't actually do much versus the tip of scales.
I think it may do enough. If he steals anything, even a 1/1, that could make a big difference, especially when you factor in Sludge Slurper, Lackey, and Mind Control tech all coming down next turn is one heck of a swing.
What if he goes like double 2-drop this turn, trades the 2 minions across?
What do you mean by double 2-drop?
If he goes the...
Finley and Tidecaller?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Does he even trade? What if he shows face?
I think this is, personally I think this is too much of a board control matchup, and taking strong value trades is too important.
That's funny. Finley doesn't work, you've got 2 of them.
I literally swear, whenever my opponent plays that card, I always get Underbelly Angler. I don't know what it is. It comes up a disproportionate amount of time. Yeah, I know, I'm not This is actually pretty good here for Alutemu. I imagine we're probably going to see the MC tech this turn though, but maybe at a later point it could come into play.
FroStee really is just a Cold Light Seer though, away from causing havoc.
Fair point.
That's what I think that's what he's really missed. That's the dream, the Cold Light Seer.
Yeah. Quest completed now for Alutemu. This is where things could start to get pretty scary for FroStee, with the ability to go Hero Power Sludge Slurper next turn. If he gets any decent lackeys, this could really start to just run away for FroStee. And so now we're looking at a turn with maximum mana expenditure, at least for FroStee, with, I guess, the play I'm looking at most heavily with Mermy, Tidecaller, and Finley.
And double trade.
Yeah. Like, there's no burst damage in the deck outside of Leroy and True Silvers, which obviously is nowhere near enough to get you there at 30. So I think FroStee's got to be trading. Because imagine if Hero Power plus Sandstorm Elemental were to come down here. FroStee would just be out of the game.
Yeah, the game stands.
Yeah.
Well,
unless he gets exactly the Prismatic Lens.
Prismatic into a 2 or 1 drop version of Tip the Scales, of course.
Which, again, I suppose isn't necessarily to say he should play around it, because he may have come to the conclusion, if my opponent has Sandstorm Elemental, I'm losing the game anyway. Which, honestly, I think is a decent conclusion to come to, because for FroStee here, this has just gone horribly wrong. Does Alutemu ever consider not pressing the Hero Power to try and go off with Murlocs and Underbelly Angler?
The problem is, if he does that, he's not Hero Power and Form a Champ next turn.
Fair point. Oh, so what does he do this turn then, are you thinking?
Maybe he just plays a Form a Champ. Kills 2 minions. Kill off Finley, kill off a 2-1.
I think I like this play most of all. Because the lackeys could start to get really, really good. Oh, yeah.
Bear in mind, a lot of Shaman spell discoveries are actually AoE.
Yeah.
Have some really good AoE tools. Lightning Storm, Port Lightning, Earthquake, Hagathis Scheme, even, although not AoE of course, like Zappos is super powerful in this matchup. Yeah, it's
a lot of good stuff.
Well, this game's over.
It's starting to feel like it.
Yeah, the reason I say it's over is now there's only 2 Oracles that actually buff Murlocs. So the pull from Tip the Scales, even if he draws it next turn, is going to be nothing, because the damage output isn't there. Really, you rely on Oracles plus War Leaders to push, like, 20 plus damage easy in a turn if it's not cleaned up. Whereas that just isn't the case anymore.
And, it's easy to go in on FroStee here in saying, this is a perfect demonstration of why the deck is not good and why it doesn't deserve play. This is not the matchup that you're trying to hit at all, I think, with this deck, because if you don't hit exactly Prismatic Lens into Tip the Scales, this, I think, happens the vast majority of the time, because Battlecry Quest Shaman is such a dominant board-focused early game deck with all the lackeys that it's generating. And if he'd had this, if he'd had this hand against Druid, it would have been, I think, insane.
Yeah, it would have been way better. And also, just as much as you can say, well, when someone tipped the scales, you want 4 and die. That's the reason to bring the deck.
Part
you know
of
what I
the
mean?
deck,
Like,
yeah.
that's literally why. So just as many times as it can whiff, it can definitely hit. And if it hits hard, because if FroStee gets an early tip the scales, Alutemu just loses.
Yeah.
Because there's nothing the deck can really do. And there's that AoE I told you about. See, wasn't even making it up.
2 of them, in fact, if he wants it.
Double Storm. Wow. And also, like I said, the no Cold Light Seers made a gigantic impact on this game.
Course.
If 1 Cold Light Seer was drawn, this game could look a lot closer.
And I think the thing with the odds of getting a Prismatic Lens by turn 4 are like over 50% if you hard mulligan for it, which you don't do with this deck. You very often are keeping a curved one, such as FroStee had, because you need the early turns as well. Just going for the Prismatic Lens on turn 4 is often not good enough. Are we homing in on lethal now? It's 15 plus 6, 21, getting surprisingly close now.
Alutemu could have just gone Former Champ again with Hero Power and Mutate, but I think this is a much, I would say, safer play. And by safer, it's also quite aggressive, but I just mean he isn't going to get memed out somehow, right? If he just makes a pin taunt and also heals back up to 30. It's very safe.
That's just game. This is what happens when you don't draw Prismatic Lens in this matchup, because FroStee had what in a lot of other matchups would have been very good. That would have been Druid the vast majority of the time, in my opinion. Honestly, I think that would have had a shot against Warrior if it hadn't got a very strong early curve.
Competitive versus Zoo as well.
Right, exactly, yeah. It's just the fact that Shaman in all of its forms at the moment has such ridiculously strong early game board control that unless you hit a real power spike, you're not going to be able to get there.
Exactly, but that was just game number 1. Alutemu doing pretty good there, getting the win with the Shaman, but let's see if FroStee can make that Murloc Paladin work. We're going to be right back to continue this series.
Here comes the boom!
Somebody order a bomb?
No. No. No.
Ha, 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 ha.
We're gonna have some fun! Magic! Here comes the thing.
This should be interesting.
Your will is no longer.
Magic! Okay then.
Need a hand, Explorer?
You'll find me wherever the action is.
Onward to adventure!
Magic!
We have another Priest matchup coming up for you. It's going to be Alutemu's Priest versus FroStee's Warrior, I believe. And again, we're going to see what Priest can do, because whatever people think about the deck, I do enjoy casting it because it's just funny most of the time.
Yeah.
The deck's so powerful, but I still believe it has some difficult choices. I don't think it's powerful in as straightforward a way as people think when they see it, because, you know, even I see some turns around where I think, oh, should I heal? Should I play another minion? Do I hold back? When do I go all in? Because I think going all in is a tough call to make, because those, if you use a Divine Spirit, it's gone. There is no redo outside of maybe Amit kind of. But yeah, I think the deck is actually quite difficult to pull off consistently, which is the trick for Alutemu. I think he's gonna have to do it.
I fully agree. I think there's a lot of different decks at the moment that test a different, at the heart of the deck, they test a different facet of your play style. For example, OTK Paladin will test how well you can plan out when you have certain information how to play the game. If you have absolute information, how do you plan it out? Warrior tests how much do you hold on to your removal pieces and versus how much do you develop. Priest, in my opinion, tests your mettle, like your bravery with the deck, of how brave are you to just go all in.
Right.
Because it takes a certain nerve to be able to just commit. Like, for example, do you keep this hand? We could see Cleric on 1, Power Word Shield, Coin Divine Spirit, and then Inner Fire on turn 3, smack him for 10 damage.
Honestly, this Priest is one of the hardest decks I've had to deal with for Mulligan.
Yes.
Because I never know what to keep, what to play, unless it's blatantly obvious. Do you know what I mean? Unless it's clearly a sick hand like this is quickly shaping up to be. I really do struggle. Even now, though, right? There's multiple turns that could be made now. And because of Town Crier, Alutemu constantly has to consider the fact that Mummy is almost certainly in hand.
That's exactly right. Which is by far and away the most important thing that Alutemu will be considering. The other thing he has to consider against exactly FroStee's list is Weapons Project. If that were not there, I would fully expect to see from Alutemu Northshire Cleric pass. Because of the existence of that one card, I expect to see Cleric Coin Power Word Shield.
Is someone injured?
Oh, you said testing metal.
Well, this is kind of a different asset, I suppose, because this gets very, very punished by a Weapons Project, but he gets the good word here that there is no Weapons Project for FroStee, so he can start popping off.
So Power Word Shield, Divine Spirit with coin.
I don't hate it.
You can, like, what, almost certainly guarantee a 10-10 next turn to attack?
Yeah.
Maybe you can do that anyway without playing the coin.
You could go Coin Tolvir instead, which still protects the cleric.
Yeah, seems okay.
Fair enough. And then, yeah, next turn you
you
can
could
go
double
the
it
Divine
up.
Spirit.
Yeah, this is probably more reliable.
Yeah. He is not vulnerable currently to Shield Slam. He is not vulnerable to Restless Mummy in the next couple turns. This Cleric has the full go-ahead to just start hitting face and basically only be vulnerable to Brawl.
I think with that draw, just what he should do. If there was a circle, we can talk.
Yeah. Yeah,
But
Circle
there's
would be
not.
an entirely different story. There's still some consideration to just, like, heal up, because if he was to trade, heal up his Nephset, Restless Mummy would not be able to take out the Cleric, even with the help of Snip Snap.
And this is what I mean. These are tiny turns because you're working with so little mana, but they make or break games in this
They
deck,
do.
and it's tough. Like, I would feel like making a 10-10, hitting them in the face, having the Tolvir soak this 3 damage so that you don't die to anything else. And then just say, yeah, okay, cool, 10 again next turn, because you probably do get to swing next turn, and then you might, well, get to swing the turn after, and then it's close to just game. But the problem is, the second you mess that up, you might just hard lose, especially versus Warrior. I like it from his.
Yeah.
This is what I would do, whether it's right or wrong. FroStee.
Broke back.
Yep. Did the face. And now we have to see. Because this 2 damage from the Tolvir is not insignificant either. 'Cause
Absolutely.
It kind of negates the armor press from Warrior.
Yeah. Shield Slam a little bit too late, or doesn't have the support that it needs to be able to do what it needs to do. As FroStee can now set up for a clear next turn, a 10 damage is available with the second Restless Mummy, the second half of the first Restless Mummy, and the Town Crier.
Oh, I was going to say Ink Psycho Bomb.
Yeah, that would be insane.
So, what if... Does he ever, like, Acolyte in a fire here? What about if he just inner fires the
3-1. That's
and
interesting.
And then heals it.
It's still a clear with another Restless Mummy, but it's not a clear with Ziliax. But if it goes wrong, that's an incredibly valuable resource that he's effectively wasted.
True. Now this is where the game gets a little bit tricky. Maybe just plays a Pyro. Are you ever going to play both Pyros out this game?
It goes so wrong. If there is exactly second Restless Mummy, playing the Pyromancer is just bad, because then that's a full clear and 2 1-1s left on the board. And then maybe he's thinking, if there is a Restless Mummy and that happens, he has Pyromancer plus extra arms to clear up the 1-1s and get bored next turn.
I mean, to be honest, like, I think getting rid of the Snip Snap, or if worst case you clear the Snip Snap away, isn't bad.
Sure.
Like, that's an annoying minion.
Fair point.
And it can attach to Ziliax.
I agree, actually.
Which makes it more annoying. I think like, if that's
it,
the outcome, then you know what? All right.
Good point. FroStee, the numbers line up perfectly for him to be able to stay alive. And it looks like, honestly, it might be enough.
Oh, Silence, not bad pickup as well with a Pyro. That's buffed, I mean.
Yeah, Pyromancer extra arms obviously dies to Dynamatic though. There's only one in the deck for FroStee, so I don't think Alutemu can necessarily expect that.
Do you think he might go even slower and just play like Playmaster heal?
Still dies to Dynamatic, so either way it's terrible.
I think like Pyro, extra arms, and then plan to worst case injured Blademaster next the turn after might be better. Because you just don't want Ziliax to attach to this 1-1, right?
Like to play with fire?
It's just no matter what you do, it's horrendous against Dynamatic.
So when that's the case in games of Hearthstone, you've just got to suck it up and say, well, I'll do my best, and if he has it, he has it, and then what do I do after that? Look, there's the Ziliax as well.
Now we are approaching that kind of range where Alutemu could go all in once again.
He just may as well with a Silence in hand, right?
Yes, but does he do it this turn, right, is the question. Because next turn we could see Blademaster heal Divine Spirit and then a Silence as well if that were necessary. This turn, however, he makes a minion that just dies to a Magnetized Ziliax. And again, that's a one-off card, which isn't necessarily to say he should play around it, as there is actually not much stuff that punishes it.
It's just lining up pretty well, isn't it? Bit of a, grimace there from Alutemu, who's just like, oh, okay, yeah, that as well.
Yeah, I think I actually quite like this play from Alutemu. It's weak to Dynamatic, of which he's played the only one, Restless Mummies, of which he's played both. It's only
Ziliax.
Shield Slam and Ziliax that it's really weak to. So I think I can respect this play from Alutemu, as weird as it looks.
Also, let's bear in mind there is a Wan Samdi in the deck, which means there is some late game. Normally at this point you just go, oh, Alutemu's lost. And yes, it's not looking good, but there's a Silence to negate this, which helps out. And then there's also, Wan Samdi, then there's potentially Amma into 1-drop, so I wouldn't even mind just a heal pass, maybe with a Silence this turn. And just don't let FroStee heal up tons more. Oh, is he going to drop this? Okay. He's going to go kind of all in again.
Extra Arms, Divine Spirit, yeah, this is what I was looking at. I think this is correct to realize you have to go all in here yet again and just pray that it gets there. And as it currently stands, it will survive. Even a Shield Slam is not enough to take it out.
And also, not terrible, because of the minion that it is, it will gain more than 8 attacks most of the time. Which means, that it's not just, oh, flat 8 has to win the game.
I don't think it will be enough to win Alutemu the game.
Oh,
it does help, it's true. And again, on board, not enough to kill it off. If he plays the Tolvir, even with Shield Slam, it will be not enough to kill it off. And maybe, oh no, yes, sorry, yeah, I'm incorrect. It'll be exactly the same.
And this might be the death of Alutemu in this game, and it looks like this series is going to go 1-on-1, because I do now, because of the board is already secure for FroStee, even a Wan Samdi isn't really going to get the job done.
Yeah, I think like Wan Samdi on that turn, maybe it would have been enough with the beam inside hits. Yeah. But even then, Alutemu was only playing one Beaming Sidekick, so there wasn't that much he would have drawn off of the one Sambi anyway. It did just feel like FroStee got that one on lock, as is so often the case when you're running. When you are able to hit the Town Crier early on, that Restless Mummy is just the absolute nightmare. Yeah,
and Priest can be slain. We have learned today. It can lose. Even though it was looking pretty good and our team has stuck it out for quite a while, I think FroStee just had the right answer almost every single turn, which was insane. He had not only the Town Crier, but he ended up with the 2 mummies into Dynamatic, into Zilliax, into more cards as well. The Shield Slam was there. It all looked pretty good for FroStee.
It did indeed to me as well. And I think with that Warrior out of the way, we're looking at prime time for Alutemu to line that Priest up again. If he goes for the Druid, the Priest has the absolute dream up against the Druid. If he goes for Paladin, which we just got confirmation FroStee has gone for, the Priest, I think, is still decent enough against the Paladin.
Yeah, it's definitely not bad. All it takes is just a lack of Toxfin, and then you push yourself so far away from any kind of realistic damage. Because what you got to think about is, outside of Tip the Scales, which yes can just win the game, maybe has the same kind of power level as Priest in terms of just a sort of big turn win, but we saw then even 1 drop into 2 drop into 3 drop is so much time that if our team goes big on a minion outside of Toxfin, it just heals it again, heals it again, heals it again, and it just doesn't really die to just 3 attack, 2 attack, you know, those kind of small bumps. So we'll see how it works out, but those are the decks the players are going to play, because I feel like FroStee was almost forced away from Druid right now. And if he plays Druid, he's just going to die. So let's kick it off. The last game of this series, FroStee versus Alutemu. Let's see what happens. I believe those scores are slightly incorrect on the screen there. If Alutemu's 1-0, he's got a lot of matches to catch up on, because we're on week 3 of Grandmasters.
I think that's been incorrect for the whole time. I forgot to mention it, but yes, 1-3 for Alutemu is currently the score.
Imagine that. Alutemu's just not allowed to lose. So instead of getting more wins, he just stays at 0.
FroStee finding, I guess, the perfect card in Zephyrus itself there, rather than discovering an extra card, because it does force Alutemu to play a little bit more weirdly. And with a Powered Shield, even that would not be enough to stand up against the Bluegill Warrior as well. That was really the saving grace for FroStee, because without that, this was looking horrendous.
But does it matter with Psycho Bomb? Is it just going to be enough? The card's so nuts.
Well, Alutemu even go for Powered Shield. Divine Spirit here does play against Bluegill Warrior, which will 100% be at the back of his mind. Whoa. He's got the reads, man.
Well, I think this is also a nod to the fact he has exactly Nephesite Ritualist.
True.
Because he can heal back up to 6 next turn, which is pretty insane, which you can't do any other way, right? If you got put down to 1, for example, like you can't get there. So Nephesite Ritualist is pretty much the perfect card for Alutemu to make this play on. So this is good recognition of what can happen, and then
very much so. I think a lot of players would have snapped the Powered Shield, because in your mind you're thinking Divine Spirit, you want to do it when you've already buffed the health, right? So you can go for as much health as possible. But I think this has 2 benefits. As we said, plays around the Bluegill Warrior, and in addition to that, also makes the the Nephesite Ritualist with Powered Shield a perfect curve on turn 3.
Look at this turn.
I'm looking, and I'm liking what I'm seeing.
Staring.
That's a paddling.
That's a paddling.
That's a paladin. Right, I'm going to run home to paint and make that meme after this.
Home? That'll take you a while, mate.
Yeah, alright.
I'm definitely going to be able to have that tweeted out before you. Be a worse meme, but I'll get there quicker.
Terrible curve with no win condition. That's a paladin.
Oh, God. So it begins.
And it ain't gonna stop anytime soon for Alutemu. This is absurd. Look at what he can do. Powered Shield, value trade the Fish Flinger, and then Circle of Healing to get everything back up to a nice juicy health total. Yeah,
kind of ironic, because FroStee was streaming the other day, Quest Paladin, and he just had And They Don't Stop Coming on repeat for a long time, and it was just that over and over and over and over again, just the phrase repeat over and over.
The eggs start coming and they don't stop coming.
Yeah. And whereas at this point, it's really Alutemu that's putting FroStee on the worst end of that zone. Yeah, whatever, just chuck more cards. Oh, what would you like? more card draw?
No
Is he just
comeback
like-
mechanisms when you fall behind on board. That's a paladin. Oh yeah, with the blue gold warrior in hand, it doesn't even have to take the value trade on the fish flinger. Do they have fish fingers in America, or is that just an English thing?
I want to say it's an English thing. It's
Yeah.
either English specifically, or they don't call them fish fingers.
Oh, right, okay. Because I'm wondering if fish flinger is like a pun on fish finger. I wasn't sure if that was.
And it should have been like Mookley, so it gives you a bit of it gives you a fish finger.
I've played that card. But for Alutemu, this is just going from good to better. As it's only going to be so long until he manages to hit lethal. Like Divine Spirit in a fire, he's missing all the buff cards in his deck. Honestly, that's not even that bad in this matchup. He can just keep healing up with necessary ritualist. Even the silence there. This just feels like these players are playing different games.
I think FroStee just heard us, even though that's impossible. FroStee's just like,
Yeah.
well,
Is someone injured?
this is Hearthstone, this is Priest.
Yeah, I mean, this honestly...
It's just sort of like, keep it coming.
Yeah. This is close to like having to watch my supported team of Brighton have to go up against Man City and just being absolutely slaughtered, as FroStee there has nothing he can do. Alutemu takes a very, very easy win, goes up to 2 and 3. As again, we're getting more and more players going to the middle of the pack. It's going to be so close, fighting for those 3rd and 4th spots when we go towards playoffs.
And is that, am I correct in today that the Priest, players who have submitted Priest, let me get that sentence out
Yes.
properly before I mess that one up, 100% win rate?
I think you
right.
might be right.
It's Glory
Glory
won,
got
right?
the win with it. Yeah.
Alutemu won. They both submitted Priest. I sense some
Surrender
kind of,
took the win as well.
I
Yeah.
sense some kind of connection going on here, Derek, because Priest is a pretty good deck. You should probably play it and win with it, because that's what happens all the time. But that is that match done, and congratulations to Alutemu. And I'm torn in two about FroStee, because I feel bad in the extent that he just got demolished.
Yeah.
But he also submitted a deck that can whiff very hard. So, you know, just quickly, FroStee could have just played Tip the Scales with,
Yeah.
you know, and won. So I guess this is kind of the dicey game you play when you submit kind of these sort of one-sided decks, that they either go insane or they lose, which is what I feel like the deck does. Especially when you're not running, you know, other cards like there's no Nomi in his list. There's no. I've seen some lists run actually like Tyrion and stuff. You know, so that run actual late game to give yourself a chance to get there into Tip the Scales. But anyway, that is just the match, and we are strolling across to our last match of the day, and it's